Okay, so we're up to letter G, the 4 classes of Tantra. And I think you also have this chart.
Yes.
So, yeah, let's just look at the chart. These are 4 different classes of Tantra, and each one has its own deities. So when you enter Tantra, the way you enter Tantra is by receiving an initiation, sometimes called empowerment, and that's given by a lama. And the initiation will be from one of these 4 classes of Tantra. And then that gives you the right, the permission to practice that deity. And sometimes you can also practice other deities in the same class of Tantra. So initiations is the next point, so I'll talk about that afterwards. But let's just look at these 4 classes. So it seems that, in my experience, most of the initiations given, at least in the Gelug tradition, are either from the first of the 4 action or Kriya Tantra, and the last, highest yoga, or Anuttara Yoga Tantra. I've never come across any initiation for the middle 2, performance and charya. Performance and yoga tantra. They probably exist, but they just don't seem very common. So I'm just saying that because if you hear about initiations being given, then probably there will be either action tantra or highest yoga tantra. So there's differences between them. The first column is the main trainee. So for Action Tantra, trainees are said to be inferior, which sounds rather insulting maybe. But it's all relative, because anybody, to practice Tantra properly, one needs to be quite an extraordinary person and practitioner. It's not easy. Okay, so it's said to be inferior only in relation to the later classes of Tantra. Okay, so the trainees then for Action Tantra are said to be inferior, but this is only relative. And then Performance Tantra, the person is middling capacity or middling ability. Then for yoga, it's supreme. And then highest yoga, very supreme. So that's like the best. And sometimes people, Westerners, when they hear about maybe A-type personalities, when they hear about this, they really want to go right to the top. That's for me, highest yoga. Yeah, I'm. Huh?
Build the building from the roof down.
Yeah. And I was reading something His Holiness, some teachings His Holiness was giving, and he said we should be realistic about our abilities. And there's lots of people taking highest yoga tantra initiations and trying to practice it who really aren't capable of doing it. It's extremely difficult to really practice highest yoga tantra. So he said, for some of us, maybe action tantra is a more suitable type. So I thought that was good advice, that we should be humble about our abilities and not exaggerate or be unrealistic. Okay, the next column says classification according to the trainee's ability to use the bliss in the path that arises from, and then there's these 4 different situations. Looking. Now looking here, looking means looking at another deity. So this means in the context of deity yoga, okay, when you're doing that kind of practice, you're visualizing yourself as the deity, and then the surroundings, the environment as the mandala, and there are other deities within the mandala, male and female. So, and they're exquisitely beautiful, you know, bodies made of light and youthful and just gorgeous, okay? So, while doing this practice, looking at one of these other deities, it's possible that desire could arise, feeling of desire. So, a practitioner of action or Kriya Tantra is someone who's capable of using that amount of desire, that amount of bliss. Bliss here means desire, in the path without going berserk. Because what normally happens with ordinary people, when desire comes up, we just get totally caught up in the desire. And what normally happens with desire is exaggeration. You know, we focus on the object, whether it's a person or a piece of cheesecake or a sports car or whatever. The mind, this is just part of the process of the mind. It starts to fantasize and exaggerate and kind of build up the object into something much more wonderful, much more fantastic than it really is. And then it leads to this sense of, I want it. I want to have it, I want to own it, I want it to be mine, to be part of me, and so on and so forth. And we get completely attached to that, thinking it's going to make me happy. I'm going to get happiness, I'm going to get satisfaction from this object. This is what happens in a normal scenario. So the mind just gets totally carried away with desire and obsessed with the object, attached to the object. Does that sound familiar? Have you had that experience? So in Tantra, the practice of Tantra, what one is trying to do is change this usual process, and instead of, like when desire arises, instead of going down that road, turning to a different route. I mentioned this last time. A tantric practitioner, as soon as they notice desire for some attractive object coming up in the mind, immediately they remember emptiness, meditate on emptiness, the emptiness of yourself, the emptiness of the object, the emptiness of the desire. And if it works, if you're able to do this, then this experience of emptiness becomes enhanced, powerful, strong. And that experience of emptiness destroys desire. So I mentioned this analogy they use of the insect that's born in wood and then eats the wood. Remember that one? A termite or whatever. Yeah. And so in this analogy, the wood would be desire. The wood represents desire, and the termite, or whatever, would be wisdom, the mind of wisdom. So the mind of wisdom is born out of, or arises out of this medium of desire, and then it eats the desire. It eliminates the desire, stops the desire, okay? So I was thinking, actually, there's a nice section in Lama Yeshe's book about this, and I thought to read it because his words are so beautiful. And anyone who has the book, this is page 24. Okay, so first he's talking about ordinary desire. Okay, the way ordinary desire works. Feeling somehow incomplete, insecure, and unfulfilled, we look outside ourselves for something or someone that will make us feel whole. Either consciously or subconsciously we feel, if only I had such and such, then I would be happy. Right? So we feel something's missing in my life. I need something. or someone in order to be fulfilled, to be happy, and so on. With this thought as our impulse, we try to possess whatever attractive object seems most likely to fulfill our desire. In the process, we turn the object into an idol. Idol? No, idol?
Yeah.
Idol. Idolatry. Overestimating its attractive qualities until it bears little resemblance to its actual nature. So we build the object up in our mind into something, wow, so wonderful, so fantastic. In our attempt to gain possession of this overestimated object of desire, we may be either successful or unsuccessful. In other words, we don't always get what we want. If we are unsuccessful in our striving, the object remains outside of our grasp, then of course we are disappointed. The more we desire the object, the more distraught we become when we are unable to possess it. Even commit suicide, right? People do that. If they can't get something they want, they kill themselves. But what happens when we are successful, when we do get what we want? What we end up with and what we hoped to end up with turn out to be two very different things. For what we find ourselves in possession of is not the longed-for dream image, the permanent, complete, and ever-satisfying solution to our deepest problems, but something that is just as imperfect, incomplete, and impermanent as we are ourselves. The person or thing may indeed give us some momentary pleasure, but it can never begin to live up to the expectations we have loaded upon it. And so sooner or later we feel cheated and bitterly disappointed. And then who do we blame for our unhappiness? More often than not, we unreasonably blame the object. If only she were prettier, if only he treated me better, if only the car were faster or newer. Does that ever happen?
Used to be.
If only this, if only that. These are the dualistic considerations that fill our head when, disappointed with what we have, we wonder what we could replace it with that would guarantee us the happiness we crave. The next thing we know, we are searching for a new wife or a new husband or a new car, placing expectations on this new object that are just as unrealistic as the expectations we had placed on what we are now discarding. In this way, we continue to circle around and around, changing this and that in our life, but never really getting any closer to our desired happiness and peace of mind. Oops. Okay, that's the usual situation. The tantric solution to this problem is extremely radical. It involves a complete transformation of our ordinary vision. This is the central point of the tantric approach. The same desirous energy that ordinarily propels us from one unsatisfying situation to another is transmuted through the alchemy of Tantra. That's a nice analogy, alchemy. Into a transcendental experience of bliss and wisdom. The practitioner focuses the penetrating brilliance of this blissful wisdom so that it cuts like a laser beam through all false projections of this and that and pierces the very heart of reality. The various levels of confusion and conflict that now obscure our mind and prevent us from experiencing the totality of our human potential are systematically eradicated by the force of this blissful awareness. Thus, the energy of desire is harnessed in such a way that instead of increasing our dissatisfaction as it normally does, it destroys the very cause of our dissatisfaction, our fundamental ignorance of the nature of reality. And then he talks about this analogy of the insect being born in the wood and eating the wood. It's called Introduction to Tantra by Lama Yeshe. It's a wonderful book.
It is.
Very, very nice.
Amazing.
Page 23 to 25.
Costs less than the movie.
Much more beneficial. Much more useful than a movie.
It's like 40 shekels.
Huh?
It's like 40 shekels
That's for the ebook.
for the ebook.
Yeah, yeah.
You download a PDF file for 40 shekels. And
You can have it
and
instantly.
Yeshe is like, whoa.
Amazing. Well, it was also well edited. I mean, the editing was done by John Landau, who's really excellent. So,
Usually talks and then people
sorry?
usually talks and then people write.
Yeah, and Lama, if you've heard or watched Lama Yeshe in action, his English is quite broken. I mean, he admitted it himself, my broken English. So he doesn't really talk like this, okay? So this was really edited, by a scholar, someone who's very good in English. But it's a beautiful book. It's really wonderful. And they took material from many different sources and put it together in this book. So it's not that, at one point in time Lama just started teaching like this, but it's taken from many different teachings. Anyway, so that's just the idea of using desire in the path in Tantra. And it sounds beautiful the way Lama explains it, but to actually do it is not easy, because you have to have a very good understanding of emptiness, to be able to remember emptiness, bring emptiness up in your mind when you feel desire, and then go that route rather than the desire route. So you have to, and you also have to have renunciation, the first of the three principal aspects of the path. You have to be quite convinced that desire, attachment is a cause of suffering, and just continuing to follow desire just leads to more suffering rather than happiness. So you have to have quite a good understanding of that whole idea, understanding of emptiness. And then, of course, bodhicitta. The whole reason we're doing this is to help sentient beings. Compassion and love for sentient beings. So anyway, someone who practices Kriya Tantra is someone who has the ability to use the desire that arises just from looking at a beautiful deity within your mandala. So that's a certain level of desire. The next class, Performance Tantra, this practitioner can use the desire that arises from laughing and smiling. So that's like a higher level of desire. I mean, if you just think about an ordinary life, if you're just looking at some attractive person, you can get kind of a certain feeling. But then if the other person looks back at you and you exchange glances, smiling and laughing with each other, it's a higher sense of desire, right? So the second type of practitioner is able to use that level of desire without losing it, without going berserk. And the third level...
Question?
Yeah.
To progress from looking to laughing, smiling,
Yeah.
it would seem to require some degree of connection or sense of, I don't know if it's flowing with the desire necessarily, or if it's a purer place within the concept, realization of emptiness. You still, in any case, progress from looking to smiling, laughing to embracing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's possible that this is talking about one single person who progresses from one level of Tantra to another. In the beginning they can only use the desire that comes from looking, but later they can use the desire that comes from laughing and smiling. That's a possibility. But it seems it's also possible that there are people who could never progress. They could, at least in this lifetime, maybe in this lifetime they can only handle that first level of desire, of looking. They would not be able to handle a more, heightened level of desire. I think that's how it's usually explained, but I'm not sure. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question? But I think it could be, it could be one person. If you're working on your mind, working on your, renunciation and your wisdom realizing emptiness and so on, you could progress and be able to handle and utilize stronger forms of desire than you were able to before. So that is a possibility. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. And then the third one, Yoga Tantra. So this is for people who are able to manage and use in the path the desire that comes from actually touching. Okay, so this is again a higher level of desire when you actually, if you were to have physical contact with the object, touching and even embracing, hugging. Okay, so then it's a heightened level of desire. And then the highest Yoga Tantra. This practitioner is able to utilize the desire, the bliss that comes from actual sexual activity, sexual union, which is, again, a higher, stronger level of desire. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is.
You say that bliss is desire?
Well,
bliss is a really good feeling, right?
But this is what we feel. I mean, when we see an attractive person, and there's desire, but there's also a blissful feeling. I mean, this person is beautiful, is attractive. So that gives rise to a feeling of pleasure, right? Bliss. But for, most of us, this pleasure is mixed with desire, with attachment. So, but I think the point is, the way I've heard it explained, it's not coming from my practice, but because a blissful state of mind is so enjoyable, we want to stay with it. So if you can get that blissful state of mind to meditate on emptiness, you don't want to get out of it. You don't want to quickly, leave and go and have a coffee break because it's so blissful. You'll stay with it longer and longer. So that's the bliss that comes or accompanies the feeling of desire, enables one to stay in this meditative state and even go deeper, a deeper level of meditation on emptiness. Again, that's the idea. Meditating on emptiness, not, obsessing about the object of desire and fantasizing and so on, but meditating on emptiness. So because of the blissful feeling, we're able to stay in that state longer, and that means it gets stronger in our mind. We're making our mind more familiar with the experience of emptiness, and it's a deeper, more subtle level of mind. So that's why they emphasize the bliss, and there's a lot of talk about bliss in Tantra. Yeah.
But there's a catch because I was told once, I don't remember by which teacher, that you can get attached to the bliss when you practice and meditate, and that's not the point.
Yeah.
So you cannot get attached to the bliss. You're supposed to use the bliss and that's one thing.
Yeah.
And bliss and desire are always, when you practice highest yoga tantra, to do with sexual desire and bliss, not other desires. They always.
No, because, for example, when you're doing this practice of imagining offerings being made to you, okay, so you have these beautiful offerings, flowers and fruits and so on and so forth. So this is also a blissful experience, okay? So it's not only about sexual desire or desire for another person, but any kind of desire. But that's the strongest. They say this is the strongest kind of desire that we can have. So if we can tap into that desire and then transform that state of mind into an understanding of emptiness, it's very powerful. It's very super strong, super powerful. Yeah, I think that's how it works. But yeah.
So, monks and nuns cannot practice
Exactly.
Well, the thing is, this is, when you're practicing Tantra, it doesn't necessarily mean you're actually engaging in these activities, okay? You're doing it you're visualizing, okay? You're visualizing deities, yourself as a deity, other deities, and so on. You're visualizing it. You're not actually having sex with a partner. There's one exception to that, though, that at a very high level of highest yoga tantra, when you're doing highest yoga tantra, at a very, very high level, one may choose to actually use a partner. But they say before you reach that point, you have to do a lot of preparatory practice. And just to give you some idea, there's 2 stages of highest yoga tantra. One is called generation stage, and the second is called completion stage. So generation stage is the level at which you're mainly training your mind to visualize the deity, the mandala, and so on, and getting all the details. And you also need to develop calm abiding, single-pointed concentration, with this as your object. So that means you're going to be spending hours, days, months just training your mind to have this visualization and have it as clear as possible. And in the beginning, you're visualizing it relatively normal size, life size. But then when you get good at that, you have to start reducing it in size until eventually it can fit inside of a mustard seed. You know what a mustard seed is? Yeah. So that size. You have to be able to visualize the entire mandala with all the deities, all the details, even the whites of their eyes, that size. And be able to hold your mind, focus your mind on that visualization for at least 4 hours or longer. That's just the beginning. Then you train for longer, and they say even up to a year, It sounds really... Yeah. This is just generation stage, okay? And once you've accomplished that, then you can go on to completion stage. And completion stage is when you start working with the energies in the body, the subtle energies, and moving those around. And there's different levels of that. So at a very high level, one might engage in this kind of practice. And the purpose is to bring all the energies in the body, the winds in the body, into the central channel, into the heart chakra, into the very center of the heart chakra, where we have this very subtle wind, very subtle mind, awaken this very subtle mind of clear light and use it to meditate on emptiness. And that's the most powerful mind for reaching enlightenment in one lifetime. If you can do that, you can reach enlightenment in one lifetime. And it's said that the reason for engaging in union with a consort is because there's one type of wind that you can't get into the central channel unless you do that kind of practice. So again, this is like a really high level of practice. It's not just like anybody who's practicing Tantra is doing that. There's huge misconceptions about Tantra. If you go on the internet, Google and so on, you type in Tantra and you get all these, courses. Yeah, it's all about sex. Orgies, how to have a better orgasm. Sorry? Well, I think people don't know. But as soon as they hear Tantra, that's the first thing they think of. Yeah.
His Holiness, because of all these misconceptions, said if somebody asked him if he could take a consort for the practice, His Holiness said, I'll ask that person to tell this apple to fall from the tree, and if the apple would fall from the tree, I would ask this person, could you make the apple jump back into the tree? And if the apple will jump back into the tree, then I will tell him, take a consort. a consort, בת זוג.
בת זוג לתרגום.
בת זוג אמיתית, לא מדומיינת.
לא מדומיינת אלא אמיתית. אם הוא ישלים את שני הדברים האלה, אז הוא יגיד לו, אוקיי, עכשיו אתה יכול לקחת. שתבינו כמה זה רחוק.
Because if you're a male practitioner and you're engaging in this kind of practice, you have to be able to hold the semen in your body and not lose it. If you lose it, you've lost it. Yeah, so it's not easy, not easy.
For us non-monks and nuns, is it a legitimate goal through Tantra to be able to relate to somebody on that kind of holy level? I don't know if it's emptiness or it's like, is that?
You mean legitimate or realistic?
I don't know. Everything's like a pursuit, like we're trying to get somewhere.
It's legitimate.
Because there is sexuality, and how can through Buddhism can it be elevated to a place of sanctity, let's say, or?
Don't ask me. I've been a nun most of my life. But I think Alex Berzin talks about this. Do you know Alex Berzin? I was reading something about something on his website, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was about this whole thing about if you are a layperson and you have a partner and you're engaging in sexual activity, how to transform that or use that as part of your practice. Did you read that or find that or anything like? It is there. It's been a while since I looked at it, but if you go to his website and type in something like Tantra, you'll probably be able to come across that. But yeah, I'm not the best person to talk to about this because I've been a nun since I was 22. So, I haven't been married or had to, deal with that kind of issue. But it is relevant. It is important because most Western people are lay people and most have partners or spouses. And so, it is good to think about this, how to make your relationship with your partner in, part of your path, part of your practice. And it would be easier if your partner is also a Buddhist and also has similar ideas and thoughts and feelings and wants to do it. But if your partner isn't, probably more challenging. But not impossible, because it's mainly your mind, how you view your partner, how you view your relationship, and so on. So I would think it's possible. But how to do it and how easy it is, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I haven't had to try. Is that okay? Yeah, but maybe you can talk about that with some of the other people here if they've had some experience. Has anyone else had any experience with that or insights into that, how to do that?
I read once that you shouldn't mix the things.
You shouldn't what?
You shouldn't mix if you want physical practice.
That was a specific instruction that Venerable Yonten, she gave us 6 sessions last time she was here, and it was 6 Fridays, and she talked about the same kind of subjects, and she specifically said the following: do not mix your mundane or your ordinary sex life with this stuff. She was very specific and very clear about it. Do not mix your sex life with this stuff.
And I read it in other books also.
And what?
I read it in other books also. We shouldn't mix it because it makes it more complicated.
We are not there. We are not there. We are oceans away from there.
Yes, mostly people don't practice and I was against this kind of group. I don't know, but...
Sorry?
Maybe there are some Buddhas and Bodhisattvas here. I don't know.
No, but it's just realism. If you don't practice the same hours of a nun in a month, why would you go up to this high level?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's to be able to really do these kind of practices, one needs to be quite highly developed, highly accomplished, and it could be pretentious, it could even lead to arrogance, spiritual arrogance, if you think that you're able to practice at a level that you're not. So, but you can still practice compassion, love, patience, all of these qualities.
Even now we can practice.
I think that even to meditate on emptiness while you're having sex is a good thing.
Is what?
Meditating on emptiness.
Yeah.
With this mind, have a relationship, sexual relationship, it's a very good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah?
Yeah, if you can do it.
Of course it helps.
Fantastic. Yeah. Helps to not have the attachment, the grasping that we normally have. Yeah. So, yeah.
One of the practices of patience is with Dharma, right?
Yeah, like
The third notion of patience is with
don't give up, keep doing it, don't get discouraged, yeah.
Don't push up.
Okay, the last column is the etymology of the names according to the main practices. So why are these names or these terms used for the 4 classes? First is called Action Tantra, and it's called that because there's more emphasis on external activities. Because if you're really practicing Action Tantra, you're supposed to do a lot of external things, like cleanliness is very important. You're supposed to wash your hands a lot, keep your body clean, your clothes clean. There's rituals related to just about everything, and mantras you say. It can be quite complex.
And why is that? What's
Huh?
behind being clean and so on?
Why?
Why is that?
Well, it helps the mind. It helps the mind. If you have a clean environment, clean body, clean clothes. Also in Kriya Tantra, there's emphasis on diet, having a clean diet, which is similar in yoga, I think, to avoid meat, fish, eggs, onions, garlic, what are those kinds of foods called? Tamasic or something? Black foods, yeah. You try to avoid black foods because they can kind of mess you up. They can cause more disturbance in your mind. So again, it's this kind of person, the kind of person for whom Action Tantra is suited. They kind of need it, or at least it's helpful for them to have a clean environment, clean diet, clean clothes, and so on. It's kind of similar, I think, to in India also. I've watched sometimes in Bodh there are groups of Hindus who come and sit there, and they're doing all these rituals with water, washing their hands, saying mantras and so on. There's usually a leader who's leading them, and they're all sitting there in rows and doing these practices. And it looks quite similar to what's described in Kriya Tantra. So it's probably, for certain types of people, this kind of practice is very helpful. Okay. Sorry?
Also in Judaism, you have to wash hands before you eat.
Yeah.
And, all kinds of practices.
Yeah, there's a lot of rituals, a lot of different things in Judaism. Yeah.
Clean.
Cleaning, right?
So anyway, in Kriya Tantra, it says external activities predominate. Performance Tantra, there's equal emphasis on external activities, but also internal meditative stabilization. So these are equal. You have to, there is still some external activities, but you're also putting more emphasis on the internal meditative states of mind and so on. And then in yoga, excuse me, the third one, There's less emphasis on external and more on internal. So the main emphasis is on internal yoga. Yoga here meaning practices you do with your mind. And then highest yoga is called that because there's nothing higher, nothing better. And it's said to be mainly focused on internal. So it's said that highest yoga tantra yogis sometimes, they don't bother about cleanliness and rituals and diet, because their mind is beyond that. They're able to be unbothered or unaffected by such things. So even if they eat meat, even if they have, dirty bodies and dirty environment, it doesn't matter. They're still able to work on their minds in their practice.
It shouldn't be example for others and seeing them not clean.
Well, if they were going to go, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he's practicing highest yoga tantra, but I don't think you see him walking around with dirty robes and dirty face and so on. So I think it depends on the situation. I think the point is, it doesn't mean you have to be dirty, but you don't worry so much about that. So if you're living in a cave, for example, and you don't have soap, you don't have hot water, you don't have, clean food, you have to eat dirty food, it's okay. It doesn't matter. It's not going to be a problem for you. Whereas it could be a problem for a Kriya Tantra practitioner, but a highest yoga Tantra practitioner, whether things are clean or dirty, whether they eat meat or they eat vegetarian, it doesn't matter for them. They're beyond that. So, yeah. So it doesn't mean highest yoga tantric practitioners never take a bath and never wash their clothes. Yeah, of course, especially if you're a teacher and you're teaching people, you need to have a nice appearance. And
when you're around people, it's one
yeah.
thing. When you're in a cave, and no other, it's something else.
Also, the story of Mingyu Rinpoche was traveling around the road for many years.
Who?
Mingyu Rinpoche. I think he left
Mingyu.
Rinpoche.
Oh yeah, he was up in the Himalayas. He was wandering around in the Himalayas for 3 years, yeah. I saw a video of him and his long beard and yeah. And Milarepa, think about Milarepa. Okay, so that's just a little bit about the different classes of Tantra.
Can I ask a question? I don't know if it's the subject. If somebody has highest yoga empowerment, so you can practice action, performance, yoga, tantra?
That's not sure. In one sense, yes, but I'm not sure if you would still be required to get an initiation. Like if you've received a highest yoga tantra initiation and then you want to do Chenrezig practice,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you could do that without an initiation. You can get a Jainong, yes, but if you haven't had a Jainong, can you still... I'm not sure. Maybe it's better to ask.
What I heard that yes,
Mm-hmm.
you can practice the whole aspects of the deity, whole levels. But you can't,
could be.
Let's say, if I have one deity, I can't practice another deity.
Within
Because-
highest yoga tantra.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. I just can't remember exactly what is said about
I want to
that.
understand why, because all the deities are the same.
Yes, in one sense, they're all... She's asking, let's say you've had a Yamantaka initiation and you want to do Goya Samaja.
Wangchen or Jenang?
Well, I think there is only a Wangchen for Yamantaka. I don't think there's a Jainong for Yamantaka. I don't know. There could be, but yeah. So if you've had a great initiation of Yamantaka, can you just automatically practice Goya Samaja or Haruka? I don't think so. I think you would still need to get the initiation for that deity, because initiation is like, this is the next topic actually. It's like an introduction. to that practice, to that deity, to that mandala. They actually talk about entering the mandala. So in the process of the initiation, the lama, the person guiding the initiation, is bringing you into the mandala of that deity and like introducing you to the deity. And then, from, that gives you the permission.
And this is probably why when you take an initiation from a teacher, you have created a teacher-disciple relationship.
Karmic bond.
He brings you into the mandala, into that same mandala where he is.
Right.
Now he brings you into that mandala. So the bond is there automatically.
Right.
Makes sense. I don't know if protocol, I'm not sure. Makes sense.
Yeah. Do you want to have another break before we start talking about initiations? Okay, short one. 10 minutes?